This lesson is going to focus on both the inspection report and citation sheet and what you can expect if an inspector comes to evaluate your location. Typically they will come if there is a complaint lodged or if it's just a random general inspection because they're in your area. Don't be alarmed when they come through the door. Be courteous and give them the information that they're looking for. Again, their job is to protect the public, and if someone did call regarding a complaint or complaints about your business, you want to make sure that you make it easy for them to determine the facts of the case so that you don't get in any further trouble, or if it is a mistake, you're able to rectify that mistake. Usually the first thing that they're going to ask for is they'll introduce themselves, but then they're going to ask you for a copy of your bond or insurance. As we've discussed in pre-licensing over the years, and again in continuing education, just to remind and refresh you all, make sure you have copies of those readily available to provide should an inspector come to your location. Make sure you keep them in a separate file and make sure they're up to date. You want to make sure that you don't have expired forms that you're handing them. You want to make sure that your bond and your insurance are current. Again, it is mandatory that you always keep your bond in place and your insurance in place, and that it's current and active. You can definitely be fined for infractions regarding those missing papers or expired paperwork. So let's talk a little bit about the inspection when they come in. One of the first things you want to make sure you do is give them that information, but also let them go out and look through your lot. If they ask you for certain documents, make sure you're prepared to give it to them. If they're going to check your titles, make sure all your titles are completely closed out on the back. Make sure that there's no open blocks. You want to make sure that anytime that you receive a vehicle, whether it be from auction or from a personal sale where you bought it on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, or wherever, that immediately you close out those titles. So we're going to talk about all the different fines that you can expect. And again, it's so important to realize that it's a very big part of the board to actually fine people, and it's not that they're intentionally doing it, it's because you have not done something right as a dealer. You can always go to the board minutes. If you go to the Secretary of State website and you go to the licensed professions, and you go down to the used motor vehicle dealer board and click on that, there is a place where you can actually click on the meeting, the board meeting notes, and actually read about the different fines, etc. This month I just took out of, randomly just selected, just to give you an idea. They had the open session with public hearings, and with this particular, on this particular date, there was approximately 3 pages of fines that were addressed at the board meeting. And the fines, now it can be, they can be dismissed, they can uphold the citations, they can continue it, it all depends. But on this particular month, the total fines were $117,805. Now that isn't what the board actually collected that month, because again there were several that were either they accepted the fine or they went ahead and continued the hearing on it. So they might have the person coming back for more evidence, etc. But there's fines in here: $3,000, $2,000, $5,000, $9,250, $4,750. One person here, $75,000, $5,000, $500, $1,750. So as you can see, the fines aren't cheap. I mean, if you're running your business, it's very important that you do it ethically. One of the things that I always try and teach the students as they're going through my pre-licensing course is do everything the way you'd want to have it done to you, right? I mean, if you're a purchaser of a vehicle and you're actually coming in to buy a car, you don't want to be treated badly. You don't want to buy junk cars. You don't want to have problems. Now, I know we're all car dealers and we all understand that you can't guarantee that every used car isn't going to break down. That's not realistic. But doing a few things ethically to make sure it's right makes sense. That's what carries your business model on. That's what keeps you in business. As times have changed over the past 3 to 5 years, even from the last time that we did continuing education courses, this world continues to evolve into a more web-based world. Google reviews can kill your business instantly. The speed that people can go ahead and compare your vehicle to other vehicles is amazing. I mean, you can go on things like Car Gurus and instantly see, is this a good deal, is this a bad deal? You can see the Carfax right there online. So as our world continues to change in this industry, it's so important for you guys to do things above board and to avoid the fines. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have an extra $500,000, $5,000, $10,000, $75,000 to throw at something that I did wrong and I knew was wrong. And we're going to go over, again, we try and do this each session, go back through the inspection report and know what is expected as a dealer and understand what you can do to avoid the fines. It's real easy. One of the things that I tell the new students as they're coming through pre-licensing is take the fine form and hang it next to your desk and look at it every day until you're familiar with what you need to do. It's so important to be able to run a clean operation. Some of you are saying, well, I'm never going to get inspected. Well, you know what? I'm sure that's what all the people that were on this list of possible fines thought too. Until the guy walked in and said, you're fined $75,000, or you're fined $9,250, or you're fined $7,000 that can put you out of business. I take this to heart. I want you all to do a good job. I want you to be above board, be ethical, and drive your business to the point where people want to buy from you, not that you're having to sell cars to them. It's never good to have to sell to a consumer. You want them to buy from you. And the way you do that is run a good business. So let's delve into this a little bit and talk a little bit further about what can I be fined for and what is the fines related to the different areas of the Used Motor Vehicle Act. So we'll start first of all with display or sale of a vehicle for a profit in violation of OCGA Chapter 43 to 47 by unlicensed persons who have not properly titled and tagged their name the vehicle offered for sale. What does that mean? Well, this is for those people that you might want to call them curb stoners. They're the people that are going on Craigslist, buying the car, going to the person's location, buying the car and saying, listen, I got to go, don't fill in any of that, just sign where the seller's signature is and I'll handle the rest when I get home, I'm in a big hurry. Well, guess what? They're selling a vehicle in violation of Chapters 43 to 47. They're unlicensed people. How many vehicles can you sell in a year and have to be licensed? In case I'm just going to refresh your memory. Basically, the board says, or not the board, but the law says in OCGA Chapter 43 to 47 that you can't sell any for profit. That's right, zero. Zero is the answer. If you sell one car for profit, you are supposed to be a licensed dealer in the state of Georgia. Now, that doesn't mean that you're buying a car because you've sold your old car and you want to get a little bit nicer car. We're talking about people that are flipping it for money. They're not ever registering it or putting it in their name and tagging it properly in their name and then selling it. They're flipping the car illegally. You might have people that are working under you that want to flip cars through you. Stay away from that. That's unethical. That is not good business practices, and it's important. You could lose your license for it. So do not help people that are unlicensed. Failure to submit application to change ownership or designee within 30 days after 30 days of an effective date of change, $100 violation. Well, what does that mean? Well, once again, these are people that, let's say your father owned the business and he had a stroke. Well, you have 10 days to notify the board in writing and 30 days to complete the steps to actually change the designee, to change the person that was prior to getting sick was the designee for your company. So what does it involve? Well, you have to go ahead and get your fingerprints taken care of, fill out the page that changes you to the designee and have it notarized. You have to go through the pre-licensing course if you haven't taken that within 1 year of the date of the previous course that you took, and have your like I said, the fingerprint background check and everything accomplished and sent to the board. That changes the designee, and it's important to make sure you do that if you do have a sickness or a death in the family. I had to lose a very good friend recently and had to go through the steps with his wife so she understood that the designee had to change. Her being one of the owners of the company, she had decided to become the designee, and we walked her through those steps on what she needed to do to maintain the business and to continue the business without it having to be shut down. Next one that you want to look at would be failure to submit application for name change within 30 days of the change. hopefully most of you understand that a name change is different than a structure change. The structure change happens as if you went from a sole proprietor or a partnership to an LLC or a corporation INC. You should honestly, when you go to start your business, make sure that you set your structure up correctly the first time through, so you don't have these issues down the road where you have to start all over and go through all the processes again and go through class and submit applications, etc. So basically, if you're going to change the ownership or designee within 30, change your name of the business within 30 days, make sure that you fill all that out properly. There is no charge to change it, as long as it's strictly a name change or an address change. However, if you are doing a name or address change, make sure that you get the proper paperwork. And there is, in the application section, if you go to the Secretary of State and you go to the licensing portion of it, and you go to the Used Motor Vehicle Dealer Board, and you go to the applications / forms, there is a form there for you to change it out, and it has very specific directions on how to do that. So follow that to avoid getting fined for not doing that within 30 days. Failure to maintain your current surety bond. Again, you cannot operate your business without having a surety bond in place at all times. If you do, it's a $500 fine. So make sure that you do not let your surety bond lapse. Most of the time with bonding companies that are familiar with the auto industry, they realize that it has to run concurrent with the license, and it expires actually when your license expires on March 31st of even years. But for some that aren't as astute in this, they may shorten that life of that bond. So make sure that you're never without a bond at that time. Same thing with garage keeper liability insurance. The garage liability insurance always has to be in effect also. If you do decide to change companies, make sure that you get your new policy in place prior to canceling your old one. Otherwise, you face a $500 fine for that. Failure to check the appropriate box on a odometer disclosure statement in your title, that's another $500 fine. As you can imagine, you've got to make sure that you're stating whether the miles are correct or not. If the vehicle is over 10 years, you can mark it as exempt. If you know that the mileage is wrong, do not write the correct mileage in there and leave it as is. Make sure you check the box that says exceeds mechanical limits or not actual miles. You want to make sure that you're keeping yourself out of trouble, and do not tamper with odometers. Tampering with odometers is a 12-year offense for losing your license or not getting it if you are in the or you're in the licensing stage of trying to get licensed. Failure to post your buyer's guides. You must have at all times either a not for sale sticker or a buyer's guide on that vehicle. That's the as is, no warranty or warranty. Every vehicle that you have in your fleet or in your that you have for sale through your dealership has to have one or the other on at all times. The best place to put those would be in the rear left windows, so that if an inspector does walk on your lot, they can look straight down your lot and see buyer's guide, buyer's guide, buyer's guide, and they don't have to pick and hunt. If the vehicles actually have the buyer's guides that have fallen on the floor or crumpled up on the seat, etc., that's means to fine you, because it's not easily readable for the customer to see that it is that the federal buyer's guide is actually put on the vehicle, and they can write and make notes from that particular that sheet of paper, and make sure that it lists your dealership on it too, that it's not somebody else's buyer's guide that's sitting on there. Also, if you have a possession of an open title, it's a $250 fine. What is an open title? Again, that's if you flip the title over to the back. When you buy the car, you are not going to send in the title to get a new title. If you do, you're going to end up paying the title ad valorem tax. There's no reason for you to get a new title. You go to the next block. When you go to sell it, you go to the next open block, and that's where you would fill in the information for the person that is buying the vehicle from you, and you fill that out completely, and that becomes part of your ETR process as you process the vehicles through your ETR company. But again, when you buy it and you bring it home from the auction or the private sale where you got it, make sure every block on the back of that title is filled out with your information, your dealership name, your address, the date that you purchased it, your signature, the seller's signature, the mileage. You'll see every block needs to be completely filled out before you put that in your title book or in wherever you're storing your titles. If it's make sure it's in your locked file cabinet. I would actually tell you make sure it's in a fireproof lock cabinet to protect your titles and important papers such as your tops, tags, etc. But again, make sure that you don't have any open titles. That is a fine of $250 for every open title that you have in your possession. Failure to apply for a title in the retail purchaser's name within 30 calendar days after the date of sale, that's a $500 violation. You know, in today's world, now that we are fully engulfed in the ETR system and you do everything electronically, there's really no reason to wait. I understand in the past when you had runners, title runners, etc., that would have to process titles, or if your tag office was 30 or 45 minutes away and you wanted to gather up a few files before you went to process those titles, that made sense to hold titles. But in today's world, with it, you know, again, ever changing, there's no reason for you guys to hold titles. You should process those immediately. You know, very rapidly you can tell whether the check is going to clear if you're waiting for that, or you can make sure that the money's in your bank prior to doing it. But it should be a matter of a couple of days, not 30 days. Also, make sure that you're not doing or selling vehicles without having title in hand. That gets a lot of people in trouble. I think that's where we've had issues with tops in the past, and this is another area that can get you into trouble. So make sure you're processing those vehicles, but that you're not selling any vehicles on your lot until you have title in hand. And it does happen. I've talked to several insurance companies, not just insurance, but auction companies, that have stated that, yes, we do end up pulling cars back sometimes because we can't get the titles to them. So don't just assume that everything's going to go through. I've heard many stories of people that have had cars recalled back because they couldn't get titles for them, and they tried to do this, and they've already tried to process titles, and they don't have the correct paperwork, so they can't get the customer processed within the 30 days because they don't have title work for the vehicle. If you're one of those dealers that are doing it, stop doing it. Wait till the vehicle comes in. Don't be in a rush to sell that vehicle without having title in hand. That's a big issue that we see happening more and more frequently, and that's why I think you saw a big push towards the new top system. Also, failure to furnish the appropriate documents required for tag transfer to a retail purchaser within 30 days of purchase date is a $500 fine. All related again to making sure that the paperwork and the tag work is completely processed in a timely fashion so that the consumer can get the tag. One of the things that we do in our dealership is I actually process that paperwork for them as well as the tag. I mean, of course, we have to do the ETR, but what I'm talking about is actually providing the customer with the tag being mailed to their house. You can ask through your ETR, you can actually get title, tops, and tag, title, tops, and transfer. The only people that you really can't get tags for is if there are specialty tags such as a veteran tag. They have to have their DD-214 and they have to go to the tag office, or if it's a handicapped situation where they have to have letters from their doctors. But if one of my customers walks in and they're just getting a simple regular tag to put onto their new vehicle, we just go ahead and click the little box that says title, tag, and tops, and the tag gets mailed to their house. It solves them having to drive to the tag office and standing in those lines. Again, it's very easy for you guys to do. There's no reason not to, because it's not coming out of your pocket. You charge the customer for their tag, but it saves them the convenience of having to drive to a tag office to get their final tag, and it can help you avoid the fines. The other thing that you have to be aware of is aiding and abetting an unlicensed person in selling vehicles. This is people working underneath you. You know, they need to have their own license. The definition of someone that actually works for you, or that has that is licensed, is someone that is either a full-time employee or a officer of your company, meaning they have some ownership in the LLC or corporation. Those are the people that you should have working. You know, I understand if you have some people that are picking vehicles up at auctions, or you have a lot of people that are working for you, etc., that are driving vehicles right around. But again, aiding and abetting an unlicensed person in selling because they're actually agents for you, so you can make an extra $100, $150 flipping cars through your system is wrong, and it's actually it's a violation through the board. So make sure that you're not doing any of that. Keep yourself out of that kind of drudgery. We want to make sure that you guys stay clean and you do the right things by your consumer and your customer. If you do have off-premises sales, if you do not obtain a temporary license for an off-premises sale, $250 fine. For example, when would you need one of these? Well, if you're selling at a show, maybe. I did have one student that went through our class probably a year ago that bought Jeep Wranglers and then modified them and took them to shows to sell. He would get temporary off-site premises temporary permits so that he could sell those vehicles at those shows. It doesn't mean you're moving your lot week to week to week and you're just getting these little temporary operating permits to stay operating. These are special occasions. These are things that you're going to shows, etc., and you need to sell your vehicles. Failure to obtain a bill of sale or odometer statement from the individual or company from which the licensee acquired the vehicle, that's a $250 violation. And each time I mention these violations, this is how it adds up to $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, is because it's the number of violations, not just that you're going to get charged $250 for one, you're going to get $250 for every violation they find, or $500 for each violation of that magnitude or that type. So you want to make sure that that you're following these to the letter of the law. But going back to the final one, failure to obtain a bill of sale or odometer statement. One of the things that I always teach a student is you want to keep all your paperwork from cradle to grave, meaning from the day that you buy the vehicle, whether it be from an auction or if you buy it from an individual on Craigslist, Facebook Facebook Marketplace, any of those places. You've got to get a bill of sale and an odometer statement. That's what starts your file. That's what starts your deal jacket, and that needs to be in there along with all of the receipts from everything you do to that vehicle. If you're renting that vehicle, all of the rental records for that, any repairs that you made to it. That's what makes up a complete deal jacket, is all those pieces in there. And again, it is required that you keep all of those papers for 3 years. If it comes to odometer statements, etc., that's 5 years that you need to keep it. So I just recommend to my students keeping all the paperwork for 5 years and then throwing it out at the end of that. You've met both the federal and the state regulations at that point. But again, make sure, even if it's an individual that you're buying the vehicle from, that you go to the person's house or wherever you're buying the vehicle with the bill of sale in hand. And if you Google bill of sale Georgia, you can, if you don't have a dealer management system, you can print those off. I believe they're called T7s, so you just print the T7 off, bring that with you, fill out the mileage, and make them sign that, and you sign it. That's the start. That's your bill of sale. There's other things that, if not corrected within 30 days of the deficiency, the violations can result in legal action. Some of those are failure to display the license in a conspicuous place. As you all hopefully remember, there's 3 things that need to hang on your wall: your sales tax certificate, your business license or occupational tax certificate from the city or county that you operate your business in, and your dealer's license. Those 3 things need to be visible to the public in an area that they can see it at all times. And that's something that you could correct, but you got to make sure it gets done. Failure to display or possess a current sales tax certificate, again, that needs to hang on the wall. It needs to be in the business name. If you change the name, make sure you get an updated sales tax certificate. Failure to obtain current master dealer tag. You have to have your master dealer tag. That's how the Department of Revenue actually identifies deals that you do, is through your master tag number, which is that 12-digit number. You probably remember that better than you remember your UCAR number or your used car dealer license number. 2 separate things. Failure to maintain required records in accordance with Rule 681-1001, which means you need to have keep all the records associated with your odometers, all the bill of sales, contracts, financing contracts, and other evidence of sales or financing transactions. Record of all purchases or sales of used motor vehicles, copies of the leasing or rental records of any motor vehicle intended for sale or sold, record reflecting repairs made to motor vehicles by the licensee, copies of the applications for the certificate of title, sales tax records, records of vehicle or vehicles bodies disposed by licensee. That was that list that I just started to go through a few minutes ago. You need to keep all of that in your deal jacket, and that's all things that the inspector will look at when they come in to inspect your facility, meaning whether it's called in as a complaint or they're driving by and they just want to do a check. You also have to failure to meet or maintain requirements for an established place of business. Means you got to have your working telephone number, your appropriate sign, and your separate entrance. They're going to look for that when they come out to re-inspect you due to someone calling in. You know, if you've moved or whatever, make sure that you follow the proper procedures to get your new location listed. Failure to comply with mandatory reporting requirements relating to convictions involving controlled substance or marijuana. You got to make sure that you're reporting anything that you may have. And as a matter of fact, one of the fines that was on here was, I can tell you right now, I read it earlier, was someone actually falsified information on his renewal application. So not knowing what that is, whether it's that they said they took continuing education, they didn't, or they possibly had a misdemeanor and never reported it. Those are some of the things that can affect it. So you want to make sure that you don't get hit with any of that. And also failure to provide proof that licensed designee has completed continuing education. Those are all things that can result in legal action against you and possibly other sanctions that they could go against you with. So it's important to understand all of these different things that can happen to you. The inspectors are a great bunch of people. I happen to know several of them. You know, they're doing their job by coming out and protecting the interests of the public, and it's your job as a upstanding dealer to do the right things. You know, we get a bad rap. There's lots of people that don't want to deal with used car dealers. We're slime. We're, you know, not a reputable group of people. You all have heard it. But the big thing is that if you take the time to do things right, you can change the view of our industry. And we work hard to do that, and I work hard with the students to make sure and push them to do the right things so that we can change our industry and that people have a better opinion of us. I hope you have learned something from this, or it's refreshed your memory on what you need to do regarding inspection reportings or being cited. And again, thank you for your time, and I hope this was of value to you.